It was just another regular Thursday night. The air had a slight chill, and the streets were nearly empty. The city's night owls were scattered in their own worlds, mostly drunk or high, seeking a warm meal to fill their empty stomachs. The place I worked at, a small local pizzeria, had been around for years but never gained much popularity. Our specialty was late-night delivery, and I'd been working here for a couple of months. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. Plus, I didn't mind the quiet. At 9:30 p.m., I was handed the shift by the previous manager, who left without much fanfare. It was my favorite time of the night, peaceful and undisturbed, with only the occasional delivery or late-night customer coming in to break the monotony. I prepped the workstations and cleaned the counters, letting the radio hum in the background. The quietness was almost soothing, especially after dealing with rowdy, tipsy customers during the day. The hours passed, and I settled into my routine. At around 11:30 p.m., the phone rang. Just one call. It was a delivery order to an apartment complex about 10 minutes away. Simple enough. I grabbed the pizza, wrapped it, and slid it into the delivery bag. I grabbed my keys and headed out the back door. The weather outside was colder than expected, the wind rustling the trees. I locked up the place, making sure it was secure before getting into my car. The drive was uneventful, as expected. But that's when I noticed something strange. As I pulled into the apartment parking lot, I noticed a man standing near the entrance, his back facing me. He was wearing a long trench coat, even though it wasn't particularly cold out. I didn't think much of it. Sometimes people linger in parking lots late at night. He didn't seem to be a threat, so I parked and grabbed the pizza. I made my way toward the apartment complex entrance. The lobby was dimly lit, with a few people scattered in the hallways. I checked the address on the slip of paper and headed down to the second floor, taking the narrow staircase. It was eerily quiet, no sounds of chatter or footsteps. As I approached the door, I knocked, announcing that I had the pizza. A low, almost mechanical voice answered from inside. "Come in." I wasn't sure if I heard it right, but I shrugged it off and opened the door. Inside was a dimly lit room. The only furniture in the living room was an old couch and a small, cracked TV. A man was sitting on the couch, staring at the screen with an empty expression. He was about my age, maybe a little older. His hair was disheveled, his face unshaven, and his eyes were distant. He didn't seem like someone who had ordered food. I stood awkwardly at the door, holding the pizza. Is this the right apartment?" The man didn't respond. He just continued staring blankly at the TV, almost like he didn't even see me. I cleared my throat. "You ordered a pizza, right?" Still nothing. I felt a chill run down my spine. Something about the situation was off, but it was late, and I needed to get back to the shop. I wasn't going to argue with some weird guy who probably wasn't all there. I set the pizza on the table, hoping he'd acknowledge it. As I turned to leave, I heard the door click behind me. I spun around, expecting to see the man right behind me, but the room was empty. The door was locked. Confused, I knocked again, this time a little louder. "Hey! You locked the door from the inside!" There was no response. I could feel the tension building in my chest. This wasn't right. I quickly checked the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. I pulled out my phone to call the building management, but as I reached for my pocket, the lights went out completely. The room plunged into darkness. The dim glow of the streetlights outside barely filtered through the windows. I froze. My phone was dead. Panic set in. I was stuck in a dark apartment with no way to contact anyone, and the feeling that something was watching me crept over me. I tried the door again, but this time it was worse. The handle wouldn't turn at all. I started banging on the door, shouting for help, but no one responded. My mind raced. The man, had he somehow locked me in here? Where had he gone? Suddenly, I heard the soft sound of breathing, slow and steady, coming from the corner of the room. I turned toward it, trying to make out the shadow in the corner. It wasn't the man. This was something much bigger. The air felt thick and heavy, like something was suffocating the life out of the room. Without thinking, I bolted for the window. I struggled to pry it open, my hands trembling. But just as I was about to crawl out, I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps coming from behind me. It was too late. The figure of the man was standing right behind me, the same blank expression. Only now his eyes were wide open, staring through me. His mouth moved as though he was about to say something, but the words never came. Instead, he reached out, his hand trembling as he grabbed my arm with an unyielding grip. I screamed, struggling against him, but I couldn't break free. The man didn't speak, didn't even seem to acknowledge my fear. He just kept staring at me. It was as though I was nothing more than a piece in a puzzle, and he was moving me around the board. Finally, with all my strength, I broke free from his grip. I ran back to the door, pounding on it again, but this time something different happened. I heard a voice, a soft whisper, coming from the other side. It wasn't the man's voice. It was something older, more sinister. "Leave him alone." I didn't know what to do. I ran back to the window and jumped out, landing hard on the ground outside. I ran through the parking lot, my mind racing. I didn't look back, but I could feel him, that cold presence following me. My car was at the other end of the lot, but it felt like miles away. When I finally reached it, I fumbled with my keys, not daring to look over my shoulder. I got in, slammed the door, and drove off, the sound of my tires squealing as I sped away. When I called the cops, they arrived at the apartment complex within minutes. They checked the building thoroughly, but the man was gone. The apartment was empty. No trace of anyone. The strangest part? The apartment number he had ordered the pizza to didn't even exist on the building's list. The room I had entered wasn't supposed to be there at all. There was no record of a man matching his description. I quit that job the next day. No one ever found out who the man was or where he went. But every time I think about that night, I still feel that cold, oppressive feeling, like something is watching me. And I know I'll never truly be able to shake it off. I was working 2 jobs to pay for the apartment I'd been eyeing for months. My full-time gig as an office assistant kept me busy during the day, but the evenings were reserved for food delivery. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid well, and on nights like tonight, it made me feel like I was making progress. By the time 10 p.m. rolled around, I'd been working for over 5 hours, running errands and making deliveries all across the city. The night was unusually quiet, and I was starting to feel the exhaustion seep in. but my phone pinged with another order. $25 for a delivery to a remote address, about 20 minutes out. It was rare for tips to be that high, so I grabbed it without hesitation. The route took me out of the city, passing through industrial areas and then into neighborhoods that thinned out quickly. It wasn't until I reached a wooded area that I realized I was leaving civilization behind. I checked my GPS, but it seemed to be directing me toward a secluded part of the road I'd never driven before. A small sign read, "Abandoned Estate, no trespassing," which felt strange but didn't make me pause. After all, it was just a delivery. As I drove deeper into the woods, the dark trees lining both sides of the road seemed to close in, and I began questioning the wisdom of continuing. My headlights barely cut through the thick darkness, and the silence of the night weighed heavily on me. There were no streetlights, no signs of life, just the steady hum of my car and the occasional rustle of leaves. I was about to turn back when I finally saw something in the distance. A faint, flickering light, like a campfire. Thinking I was close to the delivery point, I turned down a narrow, overgrown path leading toward it. As I neared the light, my headlights illuminated an old, weathered gate, a broken-down archway with 2 rusted posts and a chained entrance. The chain wasn't locked, though, so I drove right through. The road from there became even more treacherous. Rocks, potholes, and uneven gravel made it almost impossible to see ahead. The path eventually opened up into a small clearing where I saw a group of cars parked in an abandoned lot. I immediately knew something was wrong. There were no houses, no cabins, just a series of empty buildings and a sense of eerie desolation. There was no sign of the person who ordered the food. It didn't seem like anyone had been around for quite a while. I pulled my car into a spot, wondering if this was even the right place. I checked the address again, but it matched. That's when my phone buzzed with a call from the customer. His voice was rough, almost as if he'd been yelling for a long time. "Hey, you there yet? Park by the gate and follow the trail behind the old barn. You'll find us around the bend. Campfire should be visible," he said, his words slurring slightly. Something about it made me uneasy, but I didn't want to question it. The tip was generous after all. I confirmed I'd be there in a minute and grabbed the bag of food from the passenger seat, stepping out into the chilly air. I didn't see anyone. The area was dead silent except for the occasional rustle of wind in the trees. No voices, no sounds of laughter or music like you'd expect at a campsite. Nothing. Just the faint glow of a fire in the distance, far off the path. I started walking, using the flashlight on my phone to guide me. The forest was eerily still, the path narrow and twisted. The further I went, the more isolated I felt, like the trees were swallowing me up. Finally, I saw it. An orange glow through the trees. The campfire. But something was wrong. There were no tents, no chairs, nothing but the fire flickering alone in the middle of the woods, surrounded by thick brush. No people. I stopped in my tracks, my heart racing. "Hello?" I called out. My voice echoed, but there was no reply. Just silence. I wasn't sure what to do. I didn't want to leave the food, but this was too strange. As I turned to leave, I heard the unmistakable snap of a twig behind me. I spun around, heart pounding, and saw a figure standing near the edge of the firelight. They were tall, wearing a dark hoodie with the hood pulled up, their face obscured in shadow. Hey, I'm the delivery driver," I called out nervously, stepping forward. "I've got your order here." The figure didn't move. I took another step, and the figure slowly turned to face me. I couldn't make out any features, but I could feel their eyes on me, intense, unblinking. Then they spoke in a low, gruff voice, the same voice from the phone. "I didn't think you'd make it this far. You're brave, or maybe you're just stupid." A chill ran down my spine. I stood frozen for a moment, not knowing whether to run or keep going. Where's everyone else?" I asked, my voice shaky. The man didn't answer. He just took a slow step toward me, his eyes still hidden under the shadow of the hood. I'm just gonna leave the food here," I stammered, backing away. I placed the bag on the ground, still unable to tear my eyes away from the figure. Before I could turn around to leave, the man stepped forward, his pace quickening. "No need to rush off," he said, his voice gaining an edge of something darker. "Stay a while. I've got cash for you." I didn't wait for him to get any closer. My feet were moving before my brain even processed it. I turned and ran, stumbling over uneven ground, my heart hammering in my chest. I didn't stop until I reached the parking lot again, but as I fumbled for my keys, I heard the unmistakable crunch of footsteps behind me. I didn't dare look back. My hands were shaking as I jumped into my car, slamming the door behind me. I started the engine, and as I threw the car into reverse, I realized the gate was shut. The chain that had been hanging loosely when I first arrived was now fastened tightly across the entrance. Panic gripped me. I tried pulling forward, but the chain blocked my way. Footsteps were getting closer, the sound growing louder. I couldn't think straight. My mind raced, trying to figure out what to do. Finally, in a burst of fear, I threw the car into drive and sped toward the edge of the gate, barely making it through the gap. The tires skidded, and I nearly lost control as I swerved around the pillars, but I didn't care. I just had to get out. I floored it all the way back, barely glancing at the road as I drove. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following me. The next morning, I did some research. The address I'd gone to didn't exist on any map. The so-called estate was nothing but an abandoned farmhouse, and the forest preserve where I'd delivered the food closed at sunset. I never went back to that place. But sometimes when I'm out late, I hear footsteps behind me, and I wonder just what I narrowly escaped that night. I was working at a small tech warehouse, a low-paying job I had taken to make ends meet. The place was a data storage facility, tucked away far from the hustle and bustle of city life. It wasn't much. A few rows of servers, storage racks filled with old equipment, and some unused office spaces, but it paid the bills. It was a quiet, boring job, ideal for someone like me who loved the silence and solitude. But that night, everything changed. It was 11 p.m. when I arrived, ready to do my usual shift. The place was eerie at night. The building was surrounded by dense forest, and I often felt like the only person left in the world when I was there. The only sounds were the hum of the servers and the occasional clink of metal pipes shifting in the cold. The security systems were tight: camera surveillance, motion detectors, and alarm systems. At least, that's what I thought. Tonight, the place felt different. There was an oppressive silence, like something was off. I brushed it off. Just another night in isolation. I grabbed my headset and settled into my chair, pulling up the monitoring software to make sure everything was running smoothly. The quiet hum of machines was almost comforting. 2 hours into my shift, I was deep into my work, mindlessly scrolling through systems, when I heard a faint sound, a subtle thud from somewhere deep in the warehouse. My stomach tightened, but I tried to ignore it. It was probably nothing, just the building settling or a stray piece of equipment falling over. I returned my focus to the screen. A few minutes later, the power went out. The whole building plunged into darkness, and the hum of the servers ceased. Panic shot through me. I rushed to the main breaker panel, which was in a different room across the warehouse. The dim emergency lights flickered on, casting long shadows across the large, empty space. The cold, damp air made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I walked down the long corridor to the breaker room, my footsteps echoing eerily. The hallway was dimly lit, and I had to keep my phone flashlight on to see clearly. As I passed the server rooms, I noticed something strange. The door to one of the storage areas was slightly ajar. That wasn't normal. I'd made sure to lock everything before my shift started. I hurried into the breaker room and flipped the power back on. The monitors came back to life, but my stomach sank when I saw something on one of the camera feeds. The storage room door was open, and a shadow moved inside it. I grabbed a flashlight and made my way to the storage area, my heart pounding in my chest. I opened the door, calling out, "Hello? Who's there?" But there was no answer. The room was empty, just rows of old boxes and unused equipment. My flashlight beam swept the room, but no one was there. I sighed in relief, chalking it up to nerves. Just as I turned to leave, I heard a distinct rustling sound behind me, like someone was moving around in the back of the room. My flashlight darted toward the sound, but there was nothing, just the emptiness of the storage area. I was alone. The feeling of unease wouldn't leave me, though. I checked the security cameras, scanning each room for any unusual movements. The cameras were clear, and everything appeared normal, until I noticed something odd. A figure. On one of the screens, someone was walking down a corridor that didn't match any of the staff's movements. I froze, staring at the grainy footage. It wasn't one of the security guards. It was someone wearing a hood, their face obscured. My hands started to shake. I double-checked the security logs. No one was supposed to be in the building. The security system had been fully armed when I arrived, and I hadn't seen anyone since my shift began. I had to check it out. Grabbing a key card to access the restricted areas, I made my way to the hall where the figure had appeared. As I walked down the corridor, the air seemed to grow colder, and the silence became more deafening. Suddenly, I heard footsteps, not behind me, but ahead. Someone was moving quickly. I followed the sound, keeping my flashlight trained on the walls as I approached. I reached the security room, a small, windowless space, and peeked inside. The chair was spinning, but the room was empty. I was sure I'd heard footsteps, but there was no one here. The only sound now was the soft whir of the cooling fans. I was being watched. I backed away from the door, but as I turned, I saw a shadow dart from one of the server rooms. The figure was closer now, too close. My heart raced as I scrambled to get away, but I stumbled and hit the ground hard. The flashlight fell from my hand, rolling under one of the servers. I cursed under my breath, feeling around in the dark. Just as I got up and tried to make my way to the exit, the door slammed shut. I wasn't alone. The intruder was inside. Panicking, I grabbed the nearest fire extinguisher, ready to defend myself if it came to that. I could hear the intruder moving around, trying to corner me. My breath was shallow, and every noise seemed amplified in the silence. I needed to escape. I ran toward the fire exit, fumbling with the keys, praying it wasn't locked. Finally, I got the door open and sprinted into the parking lot. I jumped into my car, slammed the door, and sped off. My heart was still racing as I drove down the empty road, glancing nervously in the rearview mirror. The authorities investigated the next day, but they never found the intruder. They couldn't explain how someone got in or why the security systems didn't pick up the breach. As for me, I never went back. I quit the job a week later, the terrifying memory of that night still fresh in my mind. To this day, I wonder if someone was watching me from the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Whoever they were, I'll never forget the terror I felt that night, and the knowledge that sometimes the most dangerous places aren't the ones you expect.